Welcome to some arts adventures. I'm Judy Garrett and happy to be here to share some arts activities with you today. We're talking about arts integration, especially for the engagement of gifted learners. It's really important that we provide different avenues for our gifted learners to show their creativity. This is in a virtual hybrid situation. Obviously, we're virtual now, but these activities can work when you're back in the classroom also. So in the process of making art, we're having students do the type of thinking that we'd want them to do all the time, because in the first section, they're doing research, organizing some ideas, and putting them into a concrete something they can share. The second, they're elaborating on that, creating and sharing their communication. And the third, they're reflecting on the work. So they're thinking about how can I make this better? What works, what doesn't work? And this can also deal with writing. So these are the types of thinking we want for our gifted learners and all students. Also, we want all students, and especially, again, the gifted learners, to work from both sides of the brain. In this society, we have to have people ready to think outside the box, think creatively in the working world. And we have an expert scientist, and he said, to awaken the joy, don't we want all students to be joyful in their learning? We need creative expression and knowledge. And that's exactly what arts integration does. It combines creative expression with knowledge, blends the two together, and awakens joy in learning. Here's our agenda for today. I'm going to talk a little bit about arts integration, 4 examples, and then talk about speaking, listening, and writing, which will be incorporated throughout. It's difficult to do the arts without some speaking and listening, and writing is a good addition many times. Now, California Ed Code says that arts on the elementary level, all 4 art forms must be included in the instruction for all students. On the secondary level, it's a little different. All 4 art forms, visual and performing arts, be offered to all students. So that's all 4, not just 1 or 2. That's since 1995. It's been a mandate in all California schools. So what this means is all of our students are not getting these opportunities. And we don't want arts integration to eliminate discrete instruction in the arts. That's very important. But when it's included, it's another way of getting students to think, another entryway into the curriculum. Arts integration helps with the time problem also. We have a lot of problem with getting everything in the amount of time we have. When you integrate, you can do 2 things simultaneously. Definitions of arts integration vary. This is the one I chose for today. It is a teaching approach. Students do demonstrate understanding, so they have to do something through an art form. It's a creative process, and here's really what is very important. It's connecting an art form in another subject area and meets involving objectives in both. So it's not using the arts to teach something else or something else to teach the arts. It's the 2 evolving together. The objectives are intertwined. We call it an elegant fit. And what this means is there needs to be evaluation in both areas, which is sometimes a difficult process. So we're going to work on our first activity. This is called image analysis. Any image, it can relate to any part of your curriculum. I just happen to choose the Industrial Revolution. The image can be a photograph, artwork, an illustration from something they're reading or going to read, It's a great way to introduce a topic or use it at the end of a topic in order for students to coalesce all of their learning, put it together, and share what they know based on looking at the image. So there are three that we go into. What is going on in the picture? Generally, students will say things like, it's a factory. And so you ask the second question, what makes you say that? Because you want evidence. They usually say there's brick buildings, smokestacks, and some smoke coming out. So that to them means factory. They also sometimes say it's a long time ago. What makes you say that? Because there are horses and an old-fashioned engine, and the buildings look old. Okay. What more can you find? Often they'll say things like there's air pollution. And what makes you say that? For the evidence, of course, looking at the sky. Also, there's pollution back here. They also sometimes say they're in a hurry. What makes you say that? Because you see a lot of dust being kicked up. It looks like the horses are moving fast. And they also notice the supplies lying around, which makes them think of factory. You can also have them do arts elements. The two that seem most relevant here are line. You see some vertical and horizontal lines throughout, some curved lines, some wavy lines, and space. You see a clear foreground, middle ground, and background. So that's one way you can include the arts in your instruction. The standards with an elegant fit were History Social Science grade 8, talking about the Industrial Revolution. Grade 8, visual arts, characteristics of an art form, understanding messages or ideas. So we're working on those standards simultaneously in doing that activity. The next activity is theater. I think by now everybody knows what a tableau is in the classroom. People in a frozen picture. Well, we can't quite do that in our hybrid world. With our virtual learning, we have tried to find a way to make Tableau still work because it's a wonderful concept. It's a way to combine ideas into one picture. So there are 4 criteria for a Tableau. We can only use 2 of them. No movement frozen, different levels of positions. So the 2 we'll use. For our gifted students, we're going to do some sequencing. Before, during, and after. Or if you're talking about a piece of literature, it could be beginning, middle, and ending, or steps in a process. And then it could be more than 3. These 2 would obviously be 3. So we're going to bring in another art form, visual art. In sculpture, we have something called assemblage. And that's when you take objects that were designed for something else and put them together into a form. Also, there's a principle of design called emphasis, and we'll work on that in addition. I see the emphasis here as the gold object in the center because it's gold and it's center. However, you could make a really good case for the brown object because it's solid, it's darker and larger. So that would be an opinion. What I've done to tie this into curriculum, I've taken a photograph from the Kent State shootings. And this is the day that they did a tribute to the students who were killed. That's my starting point. So using found objects at my house, I created a before this picture. This is the during, but this is the before. This is one day before my chosen picture. So I have different levels, different positions, emphasis. These are the soldiers on the hill with their rifles. These are the fallen students and the others protesting the Vietnamese War. I intended for this to be the emphasis, especially these two signs. They're in the center and they're lit more than the others. So the chosen picture I represented with just students and the sign. So I do have 2 levels here, not 3, and the positions are just the staggered. And then I chose one day after. When you're doing this with your students, you can have them choose 10 years before and 100 years after if you want, depending on what it is. I just chose day 1, day 2, day 3. This is one day after, where we see the soldiers and the students together, both with the same intention. And again, I have different levels and positions. You can use this with any element of the art of your curriculum you want and tie it into an art form. The standards we used, grade 5, An Elegant Fit. In the standards for literature in craft and structure, they're talking about how scenes fit together, a series. In theater, we are doing a theater work informally presented to an audience. In visual arts, an innovative idea for art making. So in this case, we actually did 3 different standards together. You can easily do a writing activity after this. It would be a wonderful time to have them describe in detail the sequence of their choices. We're going to move on to another arts activity, and don't be nervous. It's dance, but it won't be hard. You can do this in your classroom even without moving furniture, but it's also nice to have a wide open space if possible. In our virtual world, we're only going to use 2 elements of dance, energy and line, because those are the 2 that will show up best in this virtual world. Energy can be sustained, flowing, or percussive, sharp. Lines can be straight, curved, wavy because they move, diagonal, vertical, horizontal, bent, angular, zigzag, circular, or spiral. And that's not an exhaustive list of lines. There could be many more. We need to tie it into something, so we're going to tie it into cycles. The water cycle, life, any life cycle, photosynthesis, the moon cycle. I'm going to choose seasons. So what you do is have one person represent each one of the 4 seasons, or you can have a group of people if you're using breakout rooms, or when we're back in the classroom, a group of people do one season. The group or solo each choose 3 to 5 verbs. That depends on the age of your children. And you create 8 counts of movement for each verb. So I'll show you what I've done. I've taken the idea of spring from the seasons, and my 3 verbs are sway, stretch, and bounce. So my 8 counts for sway would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And my 8 counts for stretch would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And my 8 counts for bounce, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if I add music to that, it will look like this. So you could put a whole dance together simply by having one person or one group do each section of the cycle. And then anyone is only responsible for a small portion. But when you put it together, you have an entire dance. Now, it's great to do a creative writing activity after this is over. If they've worked in a group to do the dance, they should work in a group for the writing, individual if it was solo. They select adverbs to modify the verbs that were used. So I might say sway gently, stretch completely, and bounce excitedly. You combine that into a descriptive paragraph or a poem. And if you have older students, it could be figurative language. And it's a wonderful way to get them to think about what they've done. And then if you have them do the performance again after they've done the writing, you'll see that they have much more expression than they had the first time because they'll incorporate those adverbs. Our standards here for our elegant fit, I chose grade 2, patterns in the world. So we did a pattern, and adverbs, we didn't use adjectives, just adverbs. Kinesthetic awareness, that's the line and the energy movement characteristics. So we're working on the two together, the pattern in science incorporated into dance. Limitless possibilities. Our next activity is theater. It's something called process drama. This is a whole school of thought in theater. At the end of this session, I'm going to give you some resources for process drama. But what you need to know now, it's students and teacher working in and out of role. So you're pretending to be someone in some place that's different. And you set this up ahead of time. It's complicated, but I'm going to show you a simple way to do this. I'm going to do teacher in role. You can also do student in role, but they need to see some kind of a demonstration, so they'll be ready to do it. So I'm going to become a character from literature and turn my classroom, which I don't really have right here, into the audience. And you'll see how this works. You have to do this within your own comfort zone. My comfort zone is wide, so I can carry this off. But if you decide to do process drama, you have to be comfortable with your choices. I am so glad that you came here today to help me. I'm having a terrible problem with my son. He's going through the neighborhood and he's ruining people's homes. I mean, the first 2 homes were just made of straw and sticks, but still someone lived there and they had to find a new place to live. And I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what to do with him. So could you give me some suggestions that might help me guide my son in a better direction? So that's one example of what you might do. And then you get feedback from the audience and it turns into an improvisation. Now, it doesn't have to be a character from literature. All of these are good, and that's not an exhaustive list. There could be others. I'm going to show you another way you can do this also by adding hot seat. Now, if you add hot seat, the student in role or the teacher in role does a prepared introduction of the character, and then they're in the hot seat and the audience asks questions. If you want facts, use the who, what, where. If you want them to be more creative and base their answers on knowledge they might have, use why and how, but you'll get more creative answers. So here's my introduction. Good day. I am Lady Madonna Tremaine, and I wanted to tell you about my wonderful new life. I'm a widow, but it's been a long time, and I just met this wonderful man, and we got married recently. He's a widower, and I moved myself and my two daughters into his lovely home. And it's working out quite well, except he travels a lot on his work. And so I'm having to also care for his dog. Now, I'm a little worried about her. She doesn't seem very down to earth. She spends a lot of time talking to birds and mice. So I've given her a schedule of chores to do, which I think will help her with reality and prepare her for the working world, which she'll have to enter eventually. Now, we're having a few bumps along the way, but I think it's going to work out just fine for all of us. Then you would put Lady Madonna Tremaine in the hot seat and ask her questions about what she's been doing. So that's two examples of process drama. The standards, I chose high school because complex characters, and for theater, a believable character. So that's what we're doing simultaneously for our Elegant Fit. You can then do a character description, a written one that would be very, very wonderful. Also, when you're doing process drama, you might use a prop. Now, I don't like to use props that are exact. I like to be a little more creative. So I have this sound shape, but it does not have to be a sound shape. It could easily be or and this just kind of helps you stay in the scene and have something to help your focus. So those are my 4 examples. And now I want you to think for a minute about assessment. Assessment in the arts is generally done with a rubric or criteria checklist. Some people say, well, the arts, it's just subjective. Well, it isn't. If it's speaking, could you hear and understand the speaking? Listening, were the students reacting appropriately? Were they following the directions given? And writing, when it's incorporated, can be assessed. But also, did they include 2 elements of dance? Did they stay in character during the process drama? Were they able to stay in character? Did they make accurate observations of the picture? So you can use different things that become more objective. They did it or they didn't do it. They did it well or they did it partially. And finally, we have some resources that you can use. The Arts Education Branch has wonderful resources on their website. They have a whole section in arts integration. The Gifted Guru is wonderful. She's very entertaining, and she has a whole section on costume pieces, props that go way beyond mine that I showed you, and you can get some great ideas. We have some samples from some LUSD teachers of standards that they connected and the combined objective for those standards. And here's some information on process drama. It's extensive, but if you become interested in it, it's a wonderful way to get everyone involved in doing something together that becomes a process and engages them in education. I enjoyed this opportunity to share with you, and I hope you'll find these very beneficial to your teaching. Thank you.